Good afternoon. Welcome to today's presentation. The article today is exploring the role of language knowledge and background knowledge in reading comprehension of specific texts in higher education. The presenters include Jinling Li, Xiaohan Sun, and Han Xiao. Our presentation is mainly divided into 5 parts. Later, Xiaohan Sun will be in charge of the results, and Han Xiao will then give us a conclusion and critique. Here comes the first part, Introduction. This article has set its roots as a language test for specific purpose. According to the definition by Bachman and his colleagues, the contents and methods in LSP tests are derived from the analysis of a specific purpose target language use situation. It is suggested that the LSP test allowed for interaction between language ability and content knowledge. This article has taken a specific look at the reading in English for specific purpose test (ESP test) and investigated how would interaction of language proficiency and background knowledge affect the reading comprehension. A range of studies have been conducted to explore this topic and have put forward relevant hypotheses. The first one is the short-circuit hypothesis put forward by Clark. The term linguistic threshold is essential. It is predicted that L1 reading strategies cannot be transferred to enhance the comprehension ability of L2 readers until they reach a certain level of L2 proficiency. Another hypothesis claims that language proficiency would affect how they apply the background knowledge. Learners with lower L2 proficiency cannot make use of their background knowledge, while intermediate learners may be affected by the background knowledge. As for learners with higher proficiency, they rely little on background knowledge, since they can always fall back on their language proficiency. As the two opposing perspectives shown above, there is not any consensus over the importance of the interaction between background knowledge and language knowledge in ESP tests. The authors also found that few studies have explored the interaction in texts of different reading difficulties. Besides, research on this topic has received little attention in the context of Aryan English. In response to the gaps mentioned above, this research is conducted to explore the interaction effects between these two factors, and it is innovative in importing 3 subject knowledge tests and its unique setting in an Aryan university. In conclusion, this research aims to address the following 2 research questions. Question 1. To what extent the reading comprehension of students of economics is influenced by the 2 factors? Question 2. At which proficiency level or linguistic threshold does background knowledge emerge to impact students' reading comprehension? Part 2. Methodology. This research has adopted a sequential explanatory mixed method design. The qualitative data were used to supplement the findings derived from quantitative data to reach triangulation. As for participants, this research was conducted in the setting of an Aryan university. A total of 90 EFL students majoring in economics are recorded. Their age ranged from 20 to 34. Amongst 19 students, there were 35 male students and 55 female students. 40 of them are junior students, while the other 50 are senior students. Now let's have a specific look at the research instruments and the research procedure. These participants had already taken a general English test in the previous semesters as formal final term exams. Their scores were used as the criterion, and they were divided into 3 different proficiency groups. Before, their background knowledge was assessed through a test that related to the key concepts of economics. Then they took a high-stakes test with 3 reading texts. Taking into account the lexical and syntactic factors, they ranked the text in order of easy to difficult. Text 1, Text 2, and Text 3, which is the most difficult one. The last instrument was a semi-structured interview. Only 50 participants were enrolled in it. The qualitative data could help explain how did the participants feel after they took the reading text. In data analysis, quantitative data collected from 3 tests were analyzed through SPSS. Regarding the qualitative data from the interview, an inductive content analysis approach was adopted.
Thanks for the leading part from Juening. I will now take over and analyze the results of the study and give some interpretation of the results. To make it more visually understandable, I've used a line chart with data markers to show Table 6 in the original text. Before we look into the chart, I want to introduce two key data in one-way ANOVA research: F statistic and p-value. On the top right, I list some formula to calculate them. The F statistic follows an F distribution. The larger the F is, the greater the evidence supporting that there is significant difference between the means of the groups. The p-value is a way to determine how likely it is to get a certain result that is true. If the p-value is small, it suggests that the result is unlikely to happen just by chance. When conducting research, the researchers typically set a significance level. The choice of this level depends on the researcher's goal and the context of the study. In this case, such as 0.01 in the study, the p-value must be less than 0.01 to be considered statistically significant. If the p-value from the test is less than significance level, then the result is considered significant. On the other hand, if the p-value is greater than the level, then the result is considered not significant. So from this line chart, we could notice that the F statistics is quite big, and the p-values are quite small, smaller than 0.01. So we could indicate that the participants who had background knowledge performed significantly better than those who did not. It is for all proficiency levels. That's pretty much about text 1 and how the F-value and P-value were calculated. Let's move on to text 2, which is a bit harder. In text 2, the 3 proficiency level groups were also divided into 2 small groups, respectively. One with background knowledge, another one without it. We can notice that for the elementary level groups, the one with background knowledge had a mean score of 47%, while their counterparts only have 22%. But it doesn't mean that there's significant difference within the elementary level groups, because the F-value was quite small, which means there's no significant difference within the elementary level groups. The mean score of intermediate participants with background knowledge was 44%, while their counterparts scored an average of 39%. Actually, that was pretty close. But the F-value and P-value shows us the fact that background knowledge had a significant effect on the performance of both intermediate level and advanced level students. Let's move on to text 3, which is the hardest one. We can notice the very interesting thing within the elementary level groups. Those ones without background knowledge scored a mean score of 64%, while their counterparts only have 41%. But it doesn't mean that there's significant difference within the elementary level groups, because the F-value is once again very small. On the other hand, the intermediate level and the advanced level groups who had background knowledge performed significantly better than those without background knowledge. Up next, I will use some 3D bar charts to demonstrate the summary of overall reading scores by its mean score. So from the bar charts, we can notice that as the proficiency level increases, the mean score also tends to increase. indicating that more advanced participants tend to perform better. The results of the study disclosed that the background knowledge was a strong indicator of the participants' reading comprehension. In other words, the participants who had a background knowledge performed significantly better than those who lacked it. Learners need a certain level of language proficiency, as well as background knowledge of the context, to gain an advantage in comprehending text of all levels of difficulty. Let's move on to the next part. I'll use another 3D bar chart to demonstrate the summary of overall reading score by its standard deviation. We can see that the mean score generally increases as the proficiency level increases for all three texts. This suggests that higher proficiency levels are associated with better reading comprehension and background knowledge. We can see that the standard deviations generally decrease as the proficiency level increases. This indicates that there is less variability in the scores among the participants with higher proficiency levels, and they tend to perform more consistently. That's pretty much all of my part. Up next, I'm gonna hand it over to my teammate, Xiaohan.
Next, let's move on to the conclusion part. In this part, I will introduce a brief summary of this study, implications for teaching, and limitations and suggestions for further research. Regarding the first research question, according to the research results, we can conclude, for the easier text, the influence of language knowledge and background knowledge on reading comprehension of the specific purpose tests is positively significant, whereas for the more difficult text, there is almost no influence. Regarding the second research question, for the easier text, background knowledge emerges to impact on the reader's comprehension at more advanced proficiency level, whereas for the more difficult text, the impact of background knowledge on the reader's comprehension is no significant distinction among three proficiency levels. According to the research results, the authors give us three implications for teaching. Firstly, when teaching reading, teachers should also teach students areas of language knowledge or grammatical structures that are related to the specific field. Secondly, reading instruction should enhance students' engagement on the aspect of cognition, emotion, and behavior. Finally, teachers should attempt to activate background knowledge when giving reading instruction. Next, let's talk about limitations and suggestions for further research. The authors listed 5 limitations of this study. The first limitation is the present study was conducted only in one university in Iran. To increase the generalization of the findings, more studies could be carried out in other parts of the country. Secondly, the participants in this study were restricted to economics students. Further studies could include participants from other majors. Thirdly, the present study was cross-sectional. Future researchers could explore the effects of background knowledge and language knowledge on reading tests in a long period. The fourth limitation is the data in this study were collected through reading tests and semi-structured interviews. Other ways, such as observation to present a comprehension picture of the effects, could be employed. Finally, the present study was based on pedagogical knowledge. Interested researchers could conduct a more ecological sound knowledge building intervention to show how it will improve the reading comprehension. Finally, let's talk about our critique. This study included some strengths and weaknesses. The first strength of this study is the authors employed a mixed methods design. That is, the quantitative data from reading tests were supplemented by qualitative data from semi-structured interviews to reach triangulation. By this means, the findings would be much more credible Secondly, the authors provided a clear structure for readers. Particularly, in the conclusion part, the authors stated some limitations, suggestions for future studies, and implications for teaching, which could highlight the significance and the value of this study. In addition, the authors also provided a detailed appendix including reading texts and questions of the interview, which was much easier for readers to understand the findings. However, there are also some weaknesses. Firstly, the participants were small-scale. Only 90 students participated in the study, and they were divided into 3 groups. In other words, there were only 30 students in each group. Furthermore, only 15 students attended to the interview. Such a small-scale sample was not quite generalized. Secondly, the authors only analyzed and interpreted the results in detail, but they did not answer the research questions explicitly and directly. Here's our references. At last, here is our discussion question. From your personal learning or teaching experience, do you think background knowledge will influence the results of your reading tests? Please feel free to share your experience or opinions. Thanks for listening.